my educator was outside. She was praying. She's a Christian woman, so pretty much everybody that kept coming down, had a basis from which to draw on the Lord. Little different denominations, but basically Dr. Judelena, like you say, he's a very staunch Catholic and prays every day, and so we're all in agreement as touching this baby. But I was actually just quite overwhelmed by the presence of the Lord in the room, and actually, as standing in the room, it was kind of surreal. Just you've sort of everything spinning around. You've got the baby over there. You guys are, having to do. I know you were terrified and praying, and in a beautiful way. It was just kind of a very unique experience. I think for all of us, each of our stories are a little different, but it was very, very unique and very special. I feel very humble. That I got to experience.
You got there about how long after? Any
well,
idea?
It was shortly after she was born, and Becky described to me that she'd been about 8 minutes stuck on the
with
perineum.
The cord compressed.
With the cord, with no oxygen at that time, and
Right,
delivered
because
basically lifeless. And they began resuscitation immediately. And this team just kept working for like another 21 minutes or so.
And we wanted to talk just a little bit about the birth complications, this birth complication when the umbilical cord somehow gets compressed in the process of birth. And is that something that happens frequently or infrequently?
Well, I think I'm going to defer to the obstetrician gynecologist, but it is a birth complication that's pretty common, I would say. Don't you think, Dr. Judelena?
Yes. Usually the number one cause is when you have a cord around the neck, where you have for compression of the circulation, when during delivery. Other things is it may not be a cord around the neck, but you have folds of cord that are compressed still when the baby is inside. Many times, more than not, where there is no complication. But when it is severe, then we have complications where the circulation of blood into the baby's brain is at risk, and this happens.
Okay, and so what the difference between it being severe or not severe has to do with how long?
Yes.
And how completely.
How long the circulation has been, stopped, or if the circulation takes more than 6 to at least not more than 10 minutes, then the baby is compromised in terms of they may not breathe, they may have later on brain injury, because of the delayed or lack of oxygen into the baby.
So when you're delivering a baby, and you realize that the cord is compressed, whether it's around the baby's neck or the torso, or just caught between the baby's body and the wall of the birth canal. When you realize that is happening, then you have a window in which you need to get that baby out. I guess that's about the only way to relieve the pressure, is to get the baby out, and so you're looking at 6 minutes is the optimum, and maybe as long as 10 minutes before you would expect there to be serious complications.
Yeah, it depends. When you have this situation happening, and the labor is still at the beginning, and then it on the monitor it would exhibit this deceleration, we call, where the heart of the baby goes down, and immediately we recognize that. But we can recognize, and we can do either change position, or if it persists, then we have to do cesarean section. But often, it happens when the baby is ready to be delivered, and that's then when the baby is already out there in the birth canal, then we have to deliver.
Okay, you're stuck. You can't do a C-section at that point in time. You've got to
point in
get the
time.
baby out, and you're looking at the clock, and the clock is ticking, and you realize that if it doesn't happen pretty quickly, you've got major problems.
Right.
And the problems could be brain damage. It could be,
or the baby doesn't breathe and no activities of life.
Yeah, it's a pretty desperate situation when you're at that point, and for the medical staff as well as, again, for the family. You know, you want to get the baby delivered as quickly as possible and as safely as possible. And when you're at the point where, like baby Siara, where you're kind of stuck and there's no, the cord is compressed, it's definitely a serious circumstance in which you want to do everything you can to deliver the baby as quickly as possible.
it's probably actually scarier for you guys than it is for the family, because
Yeah,
lots
we
of
know
times
way
the
too
family
much.
doesn't know.
Yeah. We know. Wow, we're in trouble. We've got to get something going here. And I think at least what was expressed to me upon arrival into the delivery room, probably getting ahead of myself, but just here's a really nice family, a really good Christian family. We really enjoyed them. Becky being their primary nurse, that's the first thing she shared with me. This is a lovely family, and we don't want anything to happen to their baby. We care just like the family does. This is our little baby we're helping get to be delivered, and so, yeah, it's very desperate, and it's very, to the point where you just want to do everything possible, get everybody involved to make sure that the baby's delivered safely. So.
Typically, you do a test on a baby when the baby's first born called an APGAR score.
Well, an APGAR score is really just a measure of 5 different things, and usually we do it at 1 and 5 minutes. But really, what you look at immediately is you look at a baby's color, you look at whether there's a heartbeat, whether there's any respiratory effort. I mean, we didn't need to do an APGAR score to see that it was 0. Obviously, that was done, but I mean, we knew immediately the baby was not there, that there was nothing, there was no life in her body at that time.
But the 5 things you check are respiration, heartbeat, reflexes,
Right.
color,
Right.
Yeah.
and muscle tone.
Yes, tone.
Right? And perfect is 2 out of the 10.
10.
And she was
0.
0.
0 at 1
Nothing.
minute,
Right.
0 at 5 minutes, 0 at 10 minutes.
Right.
Right.
Which means
She essentially was dead.
she was dead.
Right.
And at any point in time, now how long did the code last?
I believe it was 21 minutes.
21 minutes.
And there was no effort made by the baby. There was no cardiac effort that we ever observed. There was no respiratory effort that we ever observed. There was nothing to indicate that she was going to come back, even with all of the valiant efforts that were going on, both with medications, with physical resuscitation. There was just nothing.
Okay. Now, when did you guys first realize, again, we're back to here's the scene, that you're all gathered around, Maria's having a baby, there's good interaction, we're excited, it's almost time, the baby's head is out, I mean, we're just this close. When did you guys realize that this isn't good?
Well, to back up a little bit, just being a believer, in Jesus as my Lord and personal Lord and Savior, and believing in God and His ability, I had during delivery we're praying. We were praying for strength for Maria to deliver, because if any fathers have ever been into a delivery room, they recognize that the mother is going through pain that a man, I believe, cannot deal with. And so I felt my part, the best thing I could possibly do for my wife, on top of coaching and being there for her, was to pray for her strength and pray for a good delivery. And so I was already kind of in that atmosphere anyways. I was to myself, just praying to where maybe my wife and my daughter could hear, as an encouraging atmosphere, as keeping the relationship with God intact, where we're communicating with God, we're believing God. But as Becky had mentioned, that I did notice some of the looks on the doctors and the nurses' faces that, you know, something was wrong. There was a look of concern, and as they, you know, exited, nurses were exiting and entering, I recognized that there was a communication being taken place, maybe medical talk, that, you know, they were calling for certain things that, you know, that looked beyond normal. The encouraging for Maria to push and get the baby out was urgent in their voice, and so, you know, my prayers were kind of redirected based on that. And so the time when I think it really kind of hit me is when Siara was actually, her head came through, and it stopped. She no longer was coming any further for some period of time, and I can't remember the amount of time myself either, but it was a while, and Maria was in, you know, even more pain. And so I just continued to pray, and I believe it probably, you know, I wasn't shy about it anymore. I'm praying out loud, and I actually recognized one time, I kind of looked down and saw a cord around Siara's body, or kind of around one of her shoulders, and you know, I don't know what really took place in my mind, but I know what I saw was not good. And I think I put that together with the look on their faces and the individuals that were starting to enter into the room, filling up the room, and being prepared for when Siara was born to address her and her need. And so I just started to focus on God, on God's word, on, you know, some of the things that would pertain to our situation. I started to, in my life, in the past, I have always recognized that God has been faithful, and especially when I have stood upon something that He has said, something that the Bible has declared God to declare as a promise for me and my family. We've been through a lot. We've seen God move in our lives, and so there was no reason for me to think anything other than, what does His word say for this situation? Okay. And I started praying for strength and for God's will to come about in this situation, because I seen the concern on the medical staff. I knew that it was beyond anything that I could do or my wife could do. And you know, in the midst of this, Siara's delivered. She's out. She's rushed over to the table, the warmer. What I thought was probably, you know, 15 to 20 individuals in the room, really crowded for, you know, such a small room. They were working on her. They started putting, you know, tubes down her and doing the compressions, doing all these things, you know. We were excited, you know, she's out. I don't know that anybody said anything to alarm us, to alarm my wife, to have, you know, there would be any panic, but I felt it, and I didn't want to say nothing to my wife, so we were just continuing to worship God, to start to exalt God, because, you know, I mean, He's worthy of praise no matter what your circumstances is, but I do recognize and understand that He inhabits the praises of His people, and I knew that just worshiping God and exalting Him, that there would be no doubt that He would be there, and we knew that we needed God there.
Maria, I mean, for the first part of this, you're pushing. I don't know that you're thinking much besides just push. But was there a time in that where you were afraid, or were you pretty much just focused on pushing, and then once, what was going on?
There was a lot going on in my mind. I can't say that it was kind of like a dream. It was just kind of just different emotions, different things going through my head. I know that I had seen Becky crying and she was praying, and I had asked her what was going on, and she said just keep praying. So that's when I heard everybody praying. I heard Manuel praying, and I heard Teresa praying. I was just kind of like, what's going on? And so as they were praying, I was praying also. Didn't really know what was going on parts of the time,
Right.
because I was pushing, and the Dr. Judelena had to finish with me, and Siara was on the bed warmer. But it was just different. It's just like a shock. It was like different things were going through my mind at, just so much going on that I couldn't just put my mind on one thing.
Right. Okay, so 21 minutes. The code blue lasts 21 minutes where they're trying to revive her. In that time, then you're praying, you're worshiping God. You're looking at this thing, and this is just completely surreal because you feel the presence of God. You think that any moment in time, Siara's going to be able to respond, but she's not. Your focus is primarily on Maria because you're the OB nurse, but
Right.
you're thinking.
And I'm just praying, and I'm tending to Maria, and she does look like she doesn't know what's going on, and it was very overwhelming. Very overwhelming.
2:59. They call the code, which means
Yeah, what had happened is the emergency room physician was joined by a pediatrician. Dr. Judelena is still present in the room because he's still continuing to work with Maria. And after they have made all attempts and used every bit of medication that we know to work, every bit of treatments that we know to work, the physicians kind of caucused on what else should we try. We tried a couple extra pushes of meds, different things to try and resuscitate her. And at that point, in terms other than God's terms, the baby, for all intents and purposes, is dead. And the risk to continue a code after you've been without oxygen for what is really almost a half an hour at that point is to really risk, a baby that would be very severely damaged, both from a brain damage perspective and others. So they decided that they had tried everything that they possibly could, and they decided to call it at 14:59. And even the staff that were involved in that and speaking to them didn't really want to do that, but kept thinking something was going to happen. The baby was going to wake up. Things were going to go their way, and it just never did. So they were very distraught as well. I know Dr. Ewan and the pediatrician. I can't think of his name right now, but they were very upset. So they called the code, and that means that all of our activities to resuscitate stop. And so at that time, they basically cleared out the equipment. He was talking about all the gadgets were gone. They were. They basically took time to clear out all the equipment. Most of the staff then left the room except for the immediate caregivers. I was still in there, one, because I was very concerned for this family, and